There's a reason why men struggle more through the midlife transition than women do. And there's a lot at stake if we don't get it right. We can do a lot of damage to ourselves and the world around us, as Donald Trump is currently proving. I'm Neil Beerbaum, Master Certified Coach, and I've spent 4 decades as an adult testing what works for personal development. In this video, I'm going to show you what happens to us, men and women, psychologically in midlife, and why men struggle with that process more than women do. I'll also show you the one key mental reframe men can make to shift their approach, and I'll alert you to the 2 main obstacles to making that shift. In my previous video, I showed how Carl Jung's concept of the shadow is more relevant than ever in today's world. I suggest you take a look at it if you haven't. And I showed how integration of the shadow, that part of ourselves that we deny, means allowing more of what we haven't allowed, and thereby expanding the range of possible attitudes, behaviors. I'll explain further as we go in this video as well. And what that could look like is a person becoming less recognizable as their old selves, less distinct, less black and white, more gray in other words, but in a positive way. Another term I often use to describe it is less one-sided. And this is essentially what the midlife journey is about and why it's relevant for this video. And I'll unpack it further with more examples as we go. And here in this video, I'm going to argue that men often have a harder time with this than women do. It's the same for men and women up to a certain point, but then how they deal with the onset of the shadow, we call it in midlife, women deal with that more constructively than men do. And I'll show how that struggle manifests as the classic midlife crisis for men and what you or he can do about it. So here's how it goes, and we'll start at the beginning. Conventional therapeutic view of childhood is to look at what our parents did to us, as though we were blank slates who were made into the wrecks we find ourselves to be. I like to look at this from ontological first principles, which means looking at things as they are, not as scientists attempt to explain them. And when we do that, we see that we are not blank slates that are done to, not entirely. We arrive with our consciousness already intact and operating, and we find ourselves in a situation that already exists, and we do our best to deal with it, with what we find there. Another way of saying this is that as children, we develop a strategy to fit into the family system and whatever other social systems we find ourselves in. School is another big one. And the phrase fit in is euphemistic. A more accurate term would be survive. After all, we can't survive without our family support, and in school it feels like every move is a survival one. So we build defenses to help us survive and strategies to help us fit in. For example, a defense against getting bullied could be staying quiet and on the sidelines. Another defense could be fighting back verbally, or another one could be throwing the first punch. And strategies for staying out of trouble might be following the rules, or being tricksy, or simply making up stories. And strategies for getting recognized and rewarded might be working hard to do well, or simply being the loudest so that you get noticed. You get the picture. And as mentioned, our brain stores many of these defenses and strategies as matters of survival. Literal survival in the case of bullying and abuse, or psychological survival in the case of, say, teasing or harsh criticism or overly strong moralization, say from the parents. Psychological survival strategies are often more insidious because they're harder to recognize and to deal with. If you get abused, it's obvious. There's physical abuse, there's real evidence. You've got something solid to deal with. Subtle psychological criticisms, guilt trips, moralizing can be far more insidious and harder to identify and deal with. And so psychologically, it becomes safer to build a strong identity around them. And we become identified with that. So saying, this is who I am. I'm the tough one who never cries. I'm the one who never gives in. I'm the one who's always winning. I'm the one who's always good, who keeps to the rules, and that makes me worthy and better than everyone else. And by taking on that strategy and identifying with it, we discount the possibility of its opposite, the weakness of losing, of sometimes not following the rules. All that stuff gets pushed into the shadow. And we come to rely on our strategy, as I said, as a matter of life and death. Without it, we feel things might fall apart. And when we're not aware that it's just a strategy, we hold on to it so tightly that when it gets threatened, we feel like it's a matter of life or death. In fact, the more it gets threatened, the more tightly we hold on to it, the more we identify with it. So this process takes us all the way into our mid-30s until we've set out our stall and started to make our mark on the world. Despite taking some different routes, both men and women end up there. Then this happens. So your subconscious starts to gather evidence, particularly the key piece of evidence that the environment you're operating in is not the same one you grew up in. people are more varied. Bullying situations are not as common or not as dangerous. You have more tools available to you, yet you're still applying the same strategy. You have a degree maybe and 10 years of work experience, yet you're still treating the smallest thing as a matter of survival. And there are two problems with this. Firstly, it doesn't match the context. And secondly, it's a bit one-sided. There are bits missing, pieces hidden. And the self with a capital S, that consciousness that arrived in the original family intact, wants to regain its wholeness. It wants those missing pieces back. And so it wants you to consider that evidence. And the evidence that things are out of balance will come in the form of feedback from the world, your boss, colleague, spouse, children telling you things or things not working. You'll find out that you're too defensive, too moralistic, too strict, too loud, too aggressive, too tricksy, whatever. And this is the critical moment or phase, is will you accept the feedback? Or will you double down on your strategy and go harder, faster, deeper, stronger at it? And that evidence will also come in the form of dreams. Your psyche, yourself will tell you that. Even in today's world of neuroscience and linear behaviorist approaches, dreams are still relevant. In fact, they speak louder than ever. And now this is where men and women start to diverge. And for this point, I'll rely on Jungian analyst and author James Hollis. And he said, women are more likely to grieve necessary losses openly and therefore with a measure of psychological honesty, while men, I'm sad to say, usually attempt to bury or deflect. But as we know, whatever's pushed under invariably surfaces elsewhere. So when he's talking about grieve necessary losses, what he means is taking that negative feedback that we've had, that you're to this or to that, and accepting that for men feels like a loss. And so they will deny it, whereas women will tend to talk about it, tend to integrate it, tend to take the feedback. And it makes sense because women have, out of necessity, always had to be more yielding and align with the more dominating forces around them as part of their strategy. As the Jewish saying goes, the man might be the head of the family, but the woman is the neck. So doing the same with new data and midlife seems more natural to women. They will align with it. They'll also get together and talk it through. I've seen for a fact that women attend women's workshops in droves, whereas men avoid them like the plague. So men, on the other hand, have historically been dominant and reliant on force to get results. So when that contradictory data comes in during midlife, when they get told what they're doing wrong or when life starts not working because they're trying one thing again and again, they're more likely to defend themselves, to deny and fight against it. Accepting, yielding, and integrating would feel like defeat for a man. Feels like a loss. So what a man might do instead is double down on his strategy. And double down means he denies everything and goes harder at it. So he does more of the same, more loudly, more aggressively. And his wife and children despair. Maybe she leaves him or threatens to, or he leaves her saying she's unfairly critical, unjust, and he just can't go on like this. And he starts again, this time with an even better wife or a better car. And maybe he tries to do all those things he never did the first time around, like play guitar or own a motorcycle. That's the classic midlife crisis scenario. And it happens because of a refusal to accept the data and integrate the shadow, those denied parts, and to allow it into full view and expand the range of possible behaviors, attitudes, and responses. The key insight that can make the biggest difference for a man struggling with this is the reframe that by giving up his one-sided strategy, he will become more and not less. By giving up his strong stance on, say, being the one who never gives in, or the one who always wins, or the one who is most moral, he will not be losing but gaining. For example, he will become strong and yielding when the situation demands it, and which his boss, colleague, spouse, children have been calling for. He will become strict and forgiving when the situation demands that, and which the world has been crying out for in case you didn't notice. These are both more, not less. These are gains, not losses. Instead of being only one-sided, the man can become multifaceted, and who wouldn't want that? When we consider the decisions of wise leaders, they're not rigid but situation appropriate. Abraham Lincoln and Nelson Mandela are good examples. They were both strong and resolute leaders, yet Lincoln once pardoned a soldier who was due to be shot for dereliction of duty. Mandela yielded to the use of the Springbok emblem. Those were not one-sided men. The same is available for men who listen to the data that's coming in and who accept and integrate it. Now, here are the two obstacles that can prevent this integration from happening. First obstacle is over-identification with the persona. So when a person's identity or sense of self is completely overlaid with the strategy that they've developed to survive in the world, it's very hard for them to see any other possibility. identification with ego is very strong. To give it up feels like death, and it is. It's an ego death. Donald Trump is our most clear example of someone who will not take in any contradictory data, who will fight to the bitter end to deny it. And we can see the power that comes out of that energy, and also the destruction. In a more ordinary example, the signs would be a person who simply cannot step outside of their persona to even consider another possibility. This is who I am, they'll say. This is the way things are. There is nothing else. There are people who will pay any price to hold on to that belief. No matter what happens around them, they would rather lose everything around them than give up the belief about who they are. You can have compassion for them, but your energy would be wasted in trying to change them. You have to know when to cut your losses. The second obstacle is linear thinking that is fiercely and aggressively defended by either science or religion. And by linear thinking, I mean cause and effect thinking. So the thinking that if I just push harder, I will inevitably get the result. If I become more strict, eventually people will listen to me. A person like that might quote scientific principles or studies, or religious teachings and texts. Either way, they're not doing the one thing that both science and religion support, which is the self-correction of systems in science, or in religious terms, self-reflection, yielding, forgiving, and developing wisdom. This is once again where Jung's work is crucial, because it looks at the evidence and sees that one-sidedness, applied with force, only produces opposition and undesirable consequences. It points to the counterintuitive solution that I've suggested, which is the idea that allowing more of what you deny or reject about yourself, the bad or the weak stuff, and more of what you criticize in others, they're the same thing, won't make you bad or weak, but quite the opposite, it'll make you whole. Now, let's find someone to go and tell that to Donald Trump. I'm Neil Beerbaum, Master Certified Coach with 20 plus years and 10,000 hours testing what actually works in the real world, not just in theory. Subscribe for more self-help for skeptics based on ontological first principles. Let me know in the comments what midlife challenges you're dealing with. I read everything and I want to know what you're going through so I can help. Because your best self deserves better.